if you don't mind, we're going to go into recess now without objection and recognize Dr. S. David Carr. And Dr. Carr, if you don't mind, if you could come to the podium and tell us about your background and why you're here today, please. We appreciate the fact you've traveled a long distance to be with us today. Thank you.
I like Tennessee. So, Mr. Chairman and distinguished leadership of the House, and Mr. Hardaway, legislation that has the potential of interrupting freedom and creating alarming concern to the citizens of Tennessee is worth taking the time and addressing the issue. And the issue is not about testing. The issue is about control. And the power to license is the power to control, because the testing is already done by these students, Christian schools, non-public schools, homeschools, SAT, ACT, Iowa Basic Skills, all of the tests that you and I had when we were youth. They're already doing all of that. But the purpose is to test them, all non-public school students, and that test is going to be based upon the curriculum that's going to be required by the Tennessee Department of Education, which to me is a somewhat conflict of interest, not only to the state, but for sure a conflict of interest for non-public schools, because the whole purpose of these schools anyway is that they don't agree with some of the curriculum. But this bill will require them to do the curriculum and then be tested upon that curriculum, and then it's not the parent or the school that's responsible for the diploma, but rather the Department of Education. So the bill is about control, and I really feel like that it's in fact, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association referred to it as threatening legislation, and the worst legislation that's been in 23 years in the state of Tennessee for these homeschools and non-private schools. And then another organization referred to it as a dangerous bill. So I'm asking for your consideration. First of all, thank you for consideration that this bill, again, is not about testing but about control, and it really should be defeated. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions for Dr. Carr? You're recognized.
Could you tell us once again how many norm reference tests you use as part of your testing criteria?
Well, there's other groups here that would probably answer that better than I can, if that's permissible.
Well, I'd like to hear that, because the test that we are administering in the state of Tennessee, not everything is a norm reference test, and usually the norm reference tests are much more difficult as opposed to the criterion reference test. And so many of the people with whom I've come in contact with in the homeschooling movement are engaged in testing their children through use of the ACT and through the Iowa test, which is one of the basic norm reference tests that are used throughout the United States, the Stanford Achievement Test, and so forth. So I know that as a tool, most of the people that I know that are homeschoolers have very high standards of testing.
That is correct.
So,
if I may, I think Debbie Landers is here today, and she may be able to answer that question. Without objection, we'll continue in recess. And Dr. Carr, if you could, I hate to ask you to hang around, if you could just
all right,
be available, please. Welcome to Nashville.
Thank you.
You're recognized. If you could just give us a short background of who you are and who you represent.
Yes, sir. I got started in homeschooling back in 1985. After that, my husband and I established a Category 4 church-related school. In 1996, I became the executive director for TANAS, which is the Tennessee Association of Non-Public Academic Schools. I represent an association and accrediting agency of approximately 60 schools across the state. A quarter of those schools are accredited. A quarter to one-half have homeschool programs. In our association, which is what I can speak for most of all, we implement the Stanford 10. All grades 2, 5, 7, and 9 in the Category 4 schools, the campus schools, are required to test. It is our recommendation that all homeschoolers every year are suggested to test with the Stanford 10.
Any follow-up? Okay. If you could give the committee a brief background on what the testing requirements are besides the Stanford 10, and what years in school are the children tested?
Grades 2, 5, 7, and 9. The Stanford 10. I would also like to remind everyone that there is a level playing ground that is out there when a child goes to graduate, and that is through the ACT test. That is what is normally used here in the South. And again, I agree with Dr. Carr, is that the one thing that we're concerned with is that any type of test that is mandated is going to drive the curriculum. So we are not interested in any testing that is going to be subject-specific or criterion referenced.
Any more questions for Ms. Landers? If not, we'll go back into session.